Well, it's time now for a review of today's headlines in today's newspapers. We're going to start, of course, with This Day newspaper of record.
All right, so we proceed with the review of the newspaper. The lead story on the cover of the newspaper today says, Jonathan, I thought Buhari will end Boko Haram since they once chose him as negotiator. And the riders, which are quite illuminated because there's also a response to what the former president said, reveals Chibok girls' abduction permanent scar on his administration. And then Shehu Garba, false former president, declares terrorist group never nominated Buhari as mediator. Garba Shehu, of course, was the spokesperson to Buhari. You know, together with Mr. Femi Adesina, they were the voices for that administration. And he's saying that, you know, against the popular, you know, line that a lot of people feel that the former general, may God bless his soul now, was chosen as a negotiator in those days. But he's saying that, no, it never happened. I believe that this would go beyond what happened at the book launch of General Lucky Rabo, you know, because that's where this whole thing happened. So this is why you're eager to say something about it.
You know what? I've been thinking that some things are cooking here, and I would love for your thoughts on this, because I must join this, because, you know, when we look at Goodluck Jonathan coming back into national politics, particularly in this run-up to 2027, something I recall, because he talks about Chibok, we must think about that international campaign of Bring Back Our Girls. Yes. We must think of the positioning of Nigeria and the Boko Haram at that era, and this and the perception of Nigeria at that time. And then we must relate it to what's been going on this past week, where we see American congressmen coming out to say that there's a genocide of Christians in Nigeria, and that people are focusing on Gaza. They should look at the Christians in Nigeria. Yes, you know, when we look at these international campaigns, particularly because he's also talking about who's funding terror, who's arming the terrorists, and this goes beyond Boko Haram now. Now we have Lakurawa, we have Mahmouda, we have all sorts of proliferation of terror even within Nigeria and also across the Sahel. But when we look at this new region, I wonder what your thoughts are, because this topic of terror, of a Muslim ticket or not, 2027, it's not something that's going to go away.
It won't go away anytime soon. And you're very correct that the former president, Jonathan, I mean, it's been like a recurrent decima in the last few weeks. If somebody is not speaking for him, he's somewhere, you know, saying something directly or indirectly to show that, you know, he's sort of back into reckoning. Of course, he hasn't said anything about whether he would like to run or not. But of course, the book that the former CDS wrote, you know, and unveiled, you know, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, where he spoke. I think that was a big platform for him to address one of the key issues that sought to his departure, you know, exit, you know, from power. And you're right, a lot of international, you know, conspiracies, he alluded to that himself, and I think he even pointed, pointedly at former President Obama, you know, who obviously didn't want him to return to power and things like that. So we can't say unlikely event because everybody is saying, but then in the event that Mr. Jonathan decides to pick the ticket of his party and run, it will be interesting because there are so many things we have seen what the presidential spokesperson said already about him, you know, responding, which I thought was too early because the former president himself hasn't said anything, you know, about running. So when Mr. Barry Ononuga says, he's free to run, but we remember, you know, all the things that he did, I thought that was needless at that point. But again, everything is allowed in politics. So General Rabo's book gathering so many people, and then President Jonathan playing a prominent role, shows that there will be interesting days ahead, that we'll see what happens. But again, if you want to stray into politics, if President Jonathan runs again for office, I hope that, and he runs on the platform of PDP, you will expect that ADC will not be an important factor in that election, or even Labour. If they are, the more you have a 3-horse race or a 4-horse race,
the more the incumbent is dancing inside the
as an advantage. But a few more stories before we go to another paper. On the side of the cover picture, concerns mount over rising diabetes cases amid hike in drug prices. Why are we still experiencing a hike in drug prices, when we're supposed to be turning the corner and things are supposed to be improving? But hey, when it comes to health, this is where we are not good news at all when it comes to that. But of course, on a cheery note, the window story here says Cardoso reforms have sparked global investors' renewed appetite for Nigeria. He pretty much said the same thing when he had a beautiful speech at the unveiling of the National Theatre. He first said that he was not going to talk about FX and cost of living and everything, but at the end of the day, all he alluded to was the fact that it looks like we may not be doing too badly if we look at certain indicators that he pointed at. And of course,
Cardi B
on the roll.
My main man. Honestly, the work that he has done at the CBN is something that I genuinely believe we should give credit to.
Especially when you hear somebody like Adebayo Ogunlesi, who met with the president and is saying here that Nigeria now exciting to investors. I think that's important.
Yes, and also Hakeem Bello Sage.
That's true.
Very importantly there. But should we take the Daily Trust, the Weekend Trust,
yes,
before
let's go
we
for
round
Daily
it
Trust.
up? I mean, we're going from good news to not so great news, but the Daily Trust, the main story there is insecurity. Kwara bleeds, and they're talking about the terrorism. As I said, it's not only Boko Haram we're facing now. Kwara is now dealing with Mahmuda, which we've spoken about countless times. First of all, when they first started coming out, but now we're seeing that they're more armed. The Daily Trust says that over 70 people have been killed in Kwara State, and particularly the recent attack where 11 people were killed. That went very viral in Oke.
All of a sudden, Kwara is in the news for not good reasons.
For not good reasons. But this is what happens if you allow a wound to fester. Because, we spoke about this off air. When we were talking about Mahmuda, we say, okay, you have terror groups that are, going into around like the Kainji Natural Forest, that we have terror groups setting up roots in Kwara State, and you allow them to do 1 or 2 kidnappings, 1 or 2 this. You essentially allow the wound to fester.
Absolutely.
They entrench themselves. They're able to fund themselves with this kidnapping. They're able to acquire better weapons and better bikes, and then they increase their operations, and then they spread. If you don't kill it at the root, then the rot will spread. And so it's a natural. This is a natural development of things that we are not proactive in sometimes with our security in Nigeria. We're only reacting.
It's very sad, isn't it? Because that's the same thing that Punch also focused on. In fact, Punch's cover puts it says bloody, and then they put the bloody in red, which underscores what is happening
something very interesting
in Kwara State.
Yeah, before we go, I think people should read Depression, Failed Marriages, Fuel Drug Abuse Among Women.
Absolutely.
I think we really need to talk about the drug crisis in Nigeria.
And which newspaper is that?
That's on Daily Trust.
On Trust. All right, I'm afraid we have to go, ladies. That brings us to the end of the morning show today. Thank you for watching, and do stay safe. I'm Steve Ayorinde.
I'm Kachi Ofia. It's been a great delight having your company on the morning show.
And I'm Adeso Agiwal-Sage from our entire team here in Lagos, Nigeria. Enjoy the rest of your morning and, of course, the rest of your day. Goodbye.